are. I am going to record this for Chloe and Peggy. So just please bear that in mind that we're recording today. Um, let's go ahead and get this show on the road. Thank you all for coming in, and I'm sorry about the technical difficulties. I forgot that the owl has been acting up, or else I would have brought the one from here over there yesterday. So I want to acknowledge that pretty much all of the information that we're going to go over today is stuff that you probably have already worked with, are familiar with, or have some level of expertise with. Okay. This training is not a reaction to anyone not doing a good job. This is not a call out of, or no part of this is a call out of anyone not doing a good job. I just find it beneficial to go over this material on an annual or semi-annual basis to make sure that everyone's on the same page and answer any questions that might come up. Because as we know, advocacy and the work that we do does evolve over time. So I just want to make sure that we are, no, that's not what I wanted. I just want to make sure that we are all, fresh and ready to respond to emergency advocacy situations. So let's go ahead. Here's our content overview. First and foremost, I'll go over backup responsibilities and expectations, and then I will talk through the emergency advocacy timeline. What does it actually look like to respond to an emergency advocacy call? And then we will talk briefly about co-occurring crime of strangulation. Mostly we're just going to talk about the KIT process because I had some questions or received some questions about that. And then I'm going to go over our hospital and law enforcement partners. We've had some new folks join us, and I know some of you maybe have never been to some of the hospitals that we serve or have only been once. And so I think it would be helpful just to talk through all of them. And then I will talk about the Healing Voices surveys to round us out. Then Katie will take over and talk about records. Oh, how is Katie going to present the training with no mic?
She can move over to my part or my spot.
Okay, sounds good. All right, so Katie will take over and talk about records, and then we'll go through transferring the hotline and troubleshooting some of the issues that we have there. And then we'll go over the crisis intervention schedule. I know sometimes it's a little bit dense or difficult to read, so let's just go back over that. Accessing the language line, this is important for us to all know how to do and be able to pull out at any time. And then finally, we'll talk over safe stays, which we have talked about here recently, but just to keep it consistent, we're going to go back over it. I do have a request. We have a lot of content to get through this morning, and I want to make sure we cover it all. If you have a question, at the end of my section and at the end of Katie's section, there is a slide for questions. If you could please hold your question until the end, unless it absolutely like you have to have an answer because otherwise you will not understand the rest of the content, that's fine. But otherwise, please hold your questions till the end and we can revisit slides as needed. Okay. All right. First and foremost, let's go over our backup responsibilities. So I realize that backup can be tedious and some of us are only doing it, a couple, 2, 3, 4 times a year. So it's important for us to remember that when we're on backup, we have to be taking that responsibility seriously. Here are a few of the things that I expect of you when you're on backup. The single most important thing is for you to answer your phone. If your phone rings, pick it up. If you are in the shower and your phone rings, turn the shower off, get out, check your phone. If you have a text message, maybe it's from a volunteer, maybe it's a personal text message, but either way, please check it. The number one thing that our volunteers say is difficult for them when they're on shift is if they cannot get a hold of backup or they cannot get a hold of someone that they're trying to reach. So please make sure you answer your phone. The next thing I need you to make sure you're doing is staying healthy and sober. Please do not drink alcohol while you are on backup. Just refrain. And if you are sick, if you become sick, if you know that you are getting sick, please, please, please realize that I'm on backup and I'm sick. I can't be both things at the same time. So either reach out to myself or Katie Poindexter, or you can reach out to your direct supervisor and they will let us know, hey, so-and-so is sick and cannot fulfill their backup duties. And at which time Katie and I will troubleshoot that and try to get someone to fill in for you. We don't want anyone who is not at their best trying to do this work because maybe it'll be fine and nothing will happen and you won't be needed, but maybe something will happen and you will be needed. And then in that exact moment after hours, we're scrambling to get some coverage for you. So please just make sure that you are staying healthy. The next thing you need to do is stay in our region. Please do not go outside of the Brad region. It just puts you further away from being able to do backup duties, especially if you're asked to respond to emergency advocacy. You also need to be ready to go on a hospital call at all times. I I'm not saying, please hear me. I am not saying that you can't go and do things. I'm not saying you can't go to dinner. I'm not saying you can't go visit family as long as they're in the Brad. I'm not saying that you can't take your kids to the park or whatever. You just need to recognize that there is a possibility that I may end up going on a hospital call, because even if we have a CRS and even if we have a volunteer, sometimes those protections fail, or sometimes those people are not able to make it for one reason or another, or it could be a conflict of interest, right? All of these things could combine to create a situation where you are not expecting to go on a hospital call, but you have to now. Okay. So being ready to go on a hospital call means having all of your materials within reasonable access. Obviously, you don't have to carry your backup bag around with you at all times, but please make sure you have a backup bag, you have packets, and you're ready with a gassed up car or at least transportation to make it to a hospital in our service area. I also need you to be able to transfer the hotline at all times, or as close to at all times as possible. Okay. Now, if you have to run to the store, I don't expect you to take your laptop with you to transfer the line. You can attempt to transfer it from your mobile phone, but as we know, that is tenuous at best. Sometimes it works and sometimes it does not. My ask is that you, when you are on backup at your home, have some kind of computer access, whether it's your work laptop or a personal computer, so that you can log on to the portal and transfer the line if needed. Many of our volunteers take care of that by themselves and don't need support, but in the moments where they do need support, it's usually time sensitive, because most of the time they're not realizing that until the line is supposed to be transferred to the next person. So please just be prepared for that. And then I need you to have access to the crisis intervention schedule at all times. The schedule is the focal point of your backup. It's where you get all of your information about what's supposed to be happening. That will tell you who your CRS is and who is on shift and what their contact information is. If you run into a problem, you're going to need to reference that schedule so that you can help address it. So if you don't have access to the schedule, that's a problem. I'm not saying that you have to put your work phone, your work email on your personal phone. If you choose not to do that, that's fine. My recommendation would just be to forward the emails from your work email to your personal or to your phone, or take a picture of it or something so that you have access to it, or carry your work phone while you're on backup. Either way, make sure that you have access to that. Our next list of asks are maybe a little more tenuous is not really the word I want to use. They're not as hard and fast as our first slide here. But if you run into some kind of problem, if you see that a volunteer is not answering the phone, or they miss a shift, or you notice a pattern of the hotline is not working when I call from my personal phone, or something like that, Katie and I really need you to say something. Okay. If you don't let us know that that's a problem, we cannot document it and we cannot try to address it, especially with regard to volunteers. A lot of times what happens to Katie is a complaint will come through about a volunteer, and it's a 5 alarm fire, because really what happened was the volunteer was not doing a good job for a while now, but nobody said anything until it became such an issue that we're having, extreme frustration about it. If you tell us about problems when they arise, we can address them as they arise and hopefully avoid larger issues down the road. Okay. It's extremely helpful. And honestly, it makes it much easier for Katie and I to do our jobs. We also expect you to support our volunteers in the CRS team. This goes along with answering your phone, but we need you to have grace especially for our volunteers. Okay. These people are giving of themselves and asking basically nothing in return. They work and do this stuff for free, and they make it so that we can have normal lives and only be on backup occasionally, right? We really need to support them as much as possible. So my ask of you is, please, please, please help them, tolerate them, support them, answer their questions. If you don't know an answer to their question, reach out for support. You're always welcome to text me. If something is majorly seriously wrong and you need support, you can of course reach out to Melissa, or Katie Poindexter is also available if she can possibly answer her phone, right? But I do want to stress that the expectation is that if you are on backup, you troubleshoot 99% of what goes on, and then bigger issues are brought to Katie, myself, or Melissa. Another thing we need you to do is provide that first emergency advocacy accompaniment if it's needed or requested. So please hear me when I say new volunteers do not have to have first call accompaniment. They can go on their first emergency advocacy call by themselves if they so choose. But we do we do offer for them to be able to have accompaniment, meaning either a staff member or a CRS person goes with them on their first call so they can do it together. So they can either observe or have someone there to guide them through the experience. Sometimes our CRS team is able to provide that accompaniment. Some of our CRS team members have been associated with Hope Harbor for many years, have a lot of experience, and have gone on many, many emergency advocacy calls. And so we feel comfortable sending them as the accompaniment. And some of our CRS team are newer and have less experience. And so it's more appropriate to send a staff member. Katie does a phenomenal job communicating ahead of time to say, hey, this volunteer has not gone on a hospital call yet, and they're on shift from 5 to 10. So please be aware that they may need accompaniment. You will not be surprised, or you should not be surprised by a volunteer requiring accompaniment. But even if you are surprised by it, you should be able to respond to it because we need to be ready to go to emergency advocacy calls at all times when you're on backup. Complete all your records. This has not been a problem for us. Katie, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that we have done a really good job of getting our records in. I thank you all for that. Please just make sure we're keeping up with that and submitting those to Katie Poindexter. And then finally, you need to submit your Healing Voices surveys. We will talk more about that later. Oh, please. Okay. Moving on, we're going to talk about the emergency advocacy timeline. So again, I recognize that I think everyone in this room has gone on at least one emergency advocacy call and you have this experience, but I do find it helpful to just go over a basic timeline of what it can look like to go on an emergency advocacy call. I do want to recognize that the timeline that I'm about to show you is tooled for a hospital because the majority of our emergency advocacy calls are to area hospitals. However, we will and can respond to emergency advocacy requests from law enforcement. So a sheriff's office or a police department could call us and say, hey, we have a survivor who came in and wishes to report. Could you send an advocate down here to work with them? That is also emergency advocacy. It is in line with what our response is supposed to look like. And so we will provide that service as well. So please, when we're talking about emergency advocacy, we really slip into this habit of just referring to it as a hospital call. And that can sometimes lead to confusion when we do get one of those rare requests from a police partner. So please remember that emergency advocacy can take place outside of the hospital. Now, for the timeline, obviously, the hospital has to call us first. We have had some issues with local hospitals here in the last year. I do think that those have been resolved at this time, and I'm reasonably confident that we're getting calls from all of our hospitals when a survivor comes in. Hospital staff can call us on the 24/7 hotline and request an advocate. When we get that call, the hotline advocate needs to gather at least some basic information from the hospital staff. Basic information includes, what hospital are you at? Is the survivor a minor or an adult? Are there any special circumstances associated with this survivor? Meaning, are they incarcerated? Do they speak another language? Do they have some kind of disability that might impact or change the way that we do advocacy? That basic information helps prepare us for what we're walking into, especially with regard to non-English speaking clients, because then we can prepare ahead of time and hopefully grab some translated materials from the office or arrange to have those brought to the hospital. So once we get that information, then the hotline advocate will call the emergency advocate and share all of that info and say, hey, you need to go to this location to provide emergency advocacy. And then that advocate needs to leave within 10 minutes of speaking to the hotline advocate. Okay. I know that 10 minutes is kind of a tight timeline, especially for folks with kiddos and families. However, as I said at the top, you should be ready to go on an emergency advocacy call at any time while you're on backup. So you should have your clothes laid out if you need to be able to throw them on and go out the door. You should have a gassed up car. You should have a packed bag. You should be coordinating with your partner or your family for childcare. We need to move quickly with regard to responding to emergency advocacy. We are very fortunate and have frankly worked very hard to build up a reputation in our community as very reliable, fast responding agency that comes when we are called. And it's incumbent on us to maintain that reputation because it also allows us to build those further community partnerships and trust. Okay. So please do your very best to leave within 10 minutes or so. If you wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and have to go on a call, Obviously, we're not going to hold you to that 10 minutes. Stretch, brush your teeth, get your stuff together, and get out the door. But please, please move as quickly as you safely can to go and respond to this call. One more point on this that I want to make. When we're talking about emergency advocacy calls during the workday, I have noticed a trend where we are notified through the group chat that there is an emergency advocacy request, and then it's crickets. We need to be moving quickly to say, I can go on this call. Obviously, if you have a client or you have a meeting impending or you have I don't know, you're supposed to be going to a school soon or something along those lines, then you are not able to go on this emergency advocacy call. But if what you have going on is basic paperwork that can wait and is not client related, or you're planning to organize your office, or you're planning to, I don't know, to work on a PowerPoint or whatever, that is not more important than emergency advocacy. Emergency advocacy is a fundamental part of the work that we do. It is one of the cornerstones of rape crisis advocacy. Working on a PowerPoint is not more important. And what I would like to see, if possible, and I know I want to acknowledge that part of the issue is staffing, and we need to be working out who is going so that we can maintain staffing. But what I would like to see from staff is more urgency during the workday with regard to emergency advocacy. Either a quick, I'm so sorry I can't go, or I'm available, I'll leave now. If that is a discussion within the office, that's fine. But we need to be moving quickly on those. Okay, so once you have been dispatched, you should arrive at the hospital and please try to enter through the emergency room doors. Most of our hospitals are quite small and might only have one or two entrances, but most of our hospitals have specific emergency room parking and specific emergency room doors. Try to enter through those doors. Do not go in through the ambulance bay. You will sometimes see other partners, law enforcement, or other agencies will enter through the ambulance bay. Don't do that. The feedback that I have received from all of our partners is that they don't prefer that. The only exception to this is Monroe County Medical Center. After hours, they lock their front door and all emergencies come through the ambulance bay. So if you are responding to Med Center Caverna, and it is after, I don't know what qualifies as after hours. I think it's after like 8 o'clock, maybe, late night, then you will need to go through the ambulance bay. But other than that, please go through the ER doors.
Mallory, real quick, I got called to Government in the middle of the night one time. They have a buzzer at the emergency thing. You tell them who they are and they'll let you in.
Yes. Yes. Thank you, Jamie. Yes. Just that's the only exception to that, though. That's the only exception. Okay. Obviously, you'll have to speak with the greeter to gain entry to the ER. And then this is Mallory perspective. You might do this differently, and that's okay with me. Generally, I recommend trying to locate the doctor or the same nurse who is providing care to the survivor and check in with them. Now, this is not to talk about this client before you meet them and learn all this information. The check-in is just so that the doctor or same nurse knows that you're there. And so you can ask if there are any other circumstances that were not covered on the hotline or maybe have evolved since the hotline call was made, right? Sometimes we're responding really quickly, especially if you are in Bowling Green and the call is in Bowling Green. But if you had to drive 45 minutes to an hour to get to Tompkinsville, a lot can change in that time. So just checking in with the nurse or doctor to say, hey, this is who I am. I'm here. Is there anything I need to be aware of before I go in that room? Can be really helpful. It's not a requirement. If you can't find the nurse or doctor, just go directly to the survivor. But I find it to be helpful to let the partner know that you're there. Meet the survivor and obtain their consent to stay. And you want to determine their goals and focus on those. Obviously, we're not going to go through that. Liaise with medical and law enforcement if the survivor wants you to, and provide support during the safe exam if it's desired or applicable. I sometimes run into confusion with staff members, especially when the safe exam is not completed or the safe exam is completed and then we leave immediately after. Please remember that emergency advocacy is not tied to the safe exam. We do not care whether a survivor gets the safe exam. We are there with them for as long as they want us to be there through the entirety of their experience of getting post-assault care. If they don't get the safe exam, you can still stay with them. Please do not just leave the hospital after the safe exam is completed. Provide those clothes. You should have your bag with you. If you need to refresh your bag of clothes or you run into an issue with the staff bag of clothes, please let Katie or I know. And honestly, you can also go up to the advocacy. Some people call it the annex. I call it the Harry Potter closet in there where we have the furnace. That's where the advocacy clothes are. You can go up there and refresh the bag for yourself, or you can ask for help with that. And also provide them with a packet. Make sure that you're assessing the survivor's safety in some kind of post-hospital plan. Do they have a safe place to go? If not, can we try and find them a safe place to go? If not, then we're talking about potentially a safe stay. You might want to offer to connect them with Hope Harbor or other outside resources. If they want to follow up from us, make sure you get that contact information. Please remember that you don't have to extract information from the survivor specifically. If they don't want to share it with you, that's totally fine. And also, you don't have to nail them down specifically to what kind of follow-up they want from Hope Harbor. Especially in the immediate aftermath of an assault, it's hard for us to think about what we're going to need, 3 hours from now, say nothing about a couple days or weeks from now. So if a survivor's unsure but kind of wants a follow-up, you can just say, well, we'll have someone follow up with you and check in later, and just circle general follow-up on your record. When you're wrapping up the advocacy, try to make sure that you leave before the survivor leaves, or you wait for them to clear the hospital and then you leave after them. This is a safety concern. We never know who is in the lobby or the waiting room. And we also don't really want people knowing, what we drive. We want to be able to part ways from the survivor and hopefully maintain that confidentiality for both of us. And I would really ask that you try to depart from the same door that you entered if possible. Obviously, there might be circumstances that don't allow that, but what that is another safety concern. If something were to happen to you and we had to go to the hospital and try to find out what time you departed, then it's easier to say, oh, all of our advocates are trained to go through the emergency room doors. So can you check your cameras and see who came through the doors at what time? Okay, and then complete the emergency advocacy record and Healing Voices survey. That should be your last step. You are not done with emergency advocacy until that has been completed. However, if you need to wait until the next morning or, the next day that you're in the office to complete the advocacy record, that's okay. Please do not let your advocacy records wait for a week, though. We need to get those in because Katie audits all of our records as they come in, and more than likely she already has the hotline record that says that you were dispatched. So please make sure you're turning those records in a timely fashion. Okay, we're going to move on now and talk about the strangulation forensic evidence kit. We did do a more in-depth training on strangulation last year, I think, a while ago. So this is not going to be as in-depth, but I do find it helpful to just go over this concept. In 2025, I think, the Attorney General for Kentucky released new guidance regarding charging strangulation as a crime in and of itself. And in accompaniment with that new guidance came a strangulation forensic evidence kit. As we all know, strangulation is a co-occurring crime with sexual assault, meaning it's like if someone experiences sexual assault, the statistical likelihood that they either have or will experience strangulation increases. We a lot of times see strangulation occurring in concurrence with the sexual assault itself. Here are some fast facts about the kit itself. First and foremost, it's smaller than a safe kit and it's contained within an envelope, not a box. And it does not have a tracking number, so it does not go into the kit tracking portal. It does expire roughly 5 years after manufacture, but remember, as with all kits, what expires within them is the guarantee on the sanitary seal on the swabs. So all that needs to be replaced inside of any kit, if it expires, is the swabs, and hospitals have lots of swabs. So please do not be thrown off if you're working with an expired kit. There are instructions inside each kit for how to handle it if it's expired, and the hospital can certainly make up for those expired pieces. Now, the strangulation kit can only be completed within 24 hours of a strangulation event. So the timeline for this is much tighter than the 96-hour window for the safe exam. So it has to be done within 24 hours of the event. And you only use the strangulation forensic kit if the survivor has not bathed or showered. And it's not on this slide because I don't know why, because I cut it, I guess. the strangulation kit can only be used if the strangulation event was a manual strangulation, meaning it was a body part of the assailant that did the strangling, a hand, an arm. I don't know what else body part you would use to strangle someone, but physical contact between the body of the survivor and the body of the perpetrator has to have been made. So if it was a situation where a cord, a rope, a belt, a necklace, some other ligature strangulation was used, then the forensic strangulation kit cannot be utilized, because what it's looking for is that contact evidence where the skin cells of the perpetrator rub off onto the neck of the survivor or the face of the survivor, and then you can take those with the swab. Okay, that's then tested for DNA evidence. That's what the kit is looking for. Come on, there we go. This is what the kit looks like. Like I said, it's an envelope. Obviously, I wrote for training purposes only on our copy, but they won't all say that. It has to be filled out on the front, but it's a lot less information than the safe kit. It also comes with a seal on the inside. When the kit is completed, the seal needs to be put on the back here. You can see this dotted bar line. That's how we know that the kit has not been tampered with after the fact, and that the evidence is appropriately protected and conserved. These are pictures of the instructions in the forensic strangulation kit. They're much shorter than the instructions in the safe exam kit. And you will notice that the important information regarding this kit number has also the expiration date information on the back of the instructions. So it's one piece of paper, not multiples, and the expiration instructions are on the back here. Okay, inside of the kit, there is a patient medical and assault information form. It is very similar to the one that's inside of the safe kit. Essentially, what the purpose of that is to identify the survivor and to obtain information about the assault that corresponds with whatever evidence might be found by using the kit. So there's a narrative section. There are some specific questions about the experience of the strangulation event and the perpetrator of the strangulation event. Now, the first, well, it doesn't have to necessarily be first, but one of the things that has to happen for the kit to be worthwhile is that the DNA standard of the survivor needs to be collected, meaning we have to get a good sample of the survivor's DNA so that we can compare it, the lab can compare it to any other DNA that's found on their neck. The way that they do that is through the buccal standard, which is just swabs inside the mouth. So buccal standard, pretty much exactly the same as inside the safe kit. And then the other part that is required are the neck swabs. There is no point in doing this kit if the survivor does not consent to having their neck swabbed. This is the primary, evidence that's being sought within this kit. So the swabs have to be collected, put back into their envelopes, well, dried first, put back into their envelopes, labeled, and returned into the kit. Okay. Now, there's one other envelope in there. It's for other evidence. This one is optional. It is not to be used on the neck. And it says on there, not additional neck swabs. This is for if the survivor has other evidence on them, like blood, semen, saliva, if they have bite or suction marks, or if they said that they scratched the perpetrator, especially if they drew blood in doing so. These swabs would be used to gather additional supplemental evidence from those areas. And again, the information must be filled out on the outside of the envelope. And the swabs have to be, say it with me, completely dry, and then put back into the envelopes and back into the big envelope that everything came in and sealed up. Now, if a survivor has experienced a strangulation event, they can report that without having to report the sexual assault. Maybe they're not willing to report the sexual assault, but they would be willing to report the strangulation. They can do that. They can also report the strangulation event in conjunction with a sexual assault. And that report can strengthen the sexual assault case because it helps corroborate the concept that there was no consent in the interaction between these two people. And a strangulation assessment can be conducted by SANE nurses. Several of our SANE nurses have some experience in doing a similar process with the neck, and this type of evidence collection is covered in our safe, oh my gosh, guys, I'm really sorry. It's very much a Tuesday morning. Our SANE nurses are experienced in this process. They have the skills necessary to complete the kit. It's very similar. It's the same process or a very similar process to the SAFE exam. So they are well equipped, and it's part of our local SANE training for them to be able to complete this kit as well. With that said, the kit can be completed outside of the hospital. If you remember, if you think back to our training last year, I said that there were gloves included in the strangulation forensic exam. The reason for that is technically a law enforcement person, usually a lab tech or an officer with specific training, they could collect this evidence inside the kit in the field without the survivor having to go to the hospital. Okay, so that's why those gloves are in there. Don't be thrown by those. They're not special. They're not magic. They're just gloves. So hospital stock gloves can be used by a nurse with no issue. I think I said this at the beginning, but the single most important thing I want you to remember about this kit is that if we are doing the SAFE exam, if the survivor has been sexually assaulted and strangled, you do not need to do both kits, because the evidence that is collected in the strangulation kit can be collected and normally is collected in the SAFE kit. There's no reason to crack two kits when you can get all of that evidence in the SAFE kit. So the only time we're doing the strangulation kit is if the survivor does not want the SAFE exam, or they're not reporting the sexual assault and they only want to report the strangulation, or if no sexual assault took place and it was just a strangulation event. Okay. Moving on. This is where I'm going to ask for participation from you guys. I made a little bit of a guessing game. I'm going to show you a picture of one of our hospital partner locations, and I want you to tell me which one it is. Here's our first one. This is the easiest one.
Med Center.
Yes, Med Center Bowling Green. Absolutely. So Med Center Bowling Green, the address is there on the screen. They do have SANEs in the ER. They are a 24/7 SANE ready facility, and we do, of course, have a very strong partnership with them. What about this one?
Logan Memorial or Med Center Russellville?
Monroe County.
No, it's Medical Center at Scottsville.
Oh.
Yes, I will say, I wish I had a better picture of this because the building is kind of like U-shaped and this is not the ER entrance. But this is the best picture that was online, so I apologize for that. But this is the Medical Center at Scottsville. They do have SANEs in the ER, and we do have a pretty strong relationship with them. They are not 24/7 SANE ready yet, though. So there may be circumstances where the SANE nurse is not able to come in, and you would have to work with a doctor or other qualified medical professional. What about this one?
WKU.
Yes, this is Med Center Health at WKU. It's over there on Normal Drive on campus, and there is a SANE in there. It's not really the ER. I actually just saw her yesterday because I dropped off a swab dryer to Med Center Health at WKU, so they now have a swab dryer. We do have a really strong partnership with them. The SANE nurse there is named Chelsea. She's very sweet. I will say, if you have to respond here, it's only going to be during the workday. So this is really only relevant to staff members. Katie Poindexter actually went on a call here a couple months ago, while ago, and it went pretty well, especially considering they didn't have a swab dryer at the time. Now, if you respond to the hospital, or if you respond to this location for a survivor, when you park, you are going to have to provide your plate number to the front desk person, so that you don't get towed by campus police, the whoever tows cars that are parked somewhere they're not supposed to be on campus. So they will ask you when you walk in for a plate number. You have to remember to give them your plate number. When I went in yesterday, I took a picture of my plate before I went in. It's pretty easy. And that's just because they have to really control parking on campus. Okay. What about this one?
I think this is Franklin.
Yes, it is Franklin. Again, this is not the emergency room entrance. I'm sorry about that. I have been there a couple times and thought, I need to take an emergency room entrance picture, and have not done it. So I apologize for that. But yes, they have SANEs in the ER, and we do have a very strong relationship there. Their ER director is actually a certified SANE and has past experience being a SANE. Her name is Tammy. She's really wonderful. This is one of our larger partners or like one of our larger population centers. So we do get more call outs here. What about this one? Yeah, this is our good friends over there at TriStar Greenview. Here's the deal. They have a person who is now apparently working in the emergency room who completed the same training. Oh my gosh, January of 24. So quite a while ago. She is not a certified SANE because she did not complete the clinical hours required to get her certification. So she is not a SANE nurse. She is a nurse who has gone through the same training. That doesn't mean that she doesn't know some of the pertinent information, but she is not qualified to do pelvic exams. So if you go on a hospital call to TriStar Greenview and they tell you that they have a SANE nurse in the ER, please ask to meet her. And if her name is Shamika, please come back and tell me, because that means that they are unethically representing someone who does not have a SANE certification as a SANE. And I would love to know about that. What about this one? This is TJ. Yes. TJ Sampson Community Hospital. Okay. It's on the same road as our Glasgow office, North Ray Street. They do have SANEs in the ER. We have a really strong partnership there. I know that I have in the past talked about what a headache TJ was. They have really turned it around. They're probably one of our strongest partnerships here. I'm super grateful for them. This is blurry. I apologize. What about this one?
Lover's Lane.
Yes. This is TriStar Lovers Lane associated with Greenview. So you are right, Sheila. It's over there on Lovers Lane. And they do have one SANE in the ER. Her name is Molly. She's very nice. We don't really have a very strong partnership with them. And they do not have a swab dryer at this time. If you're sitting in the waiting, or if you're sitting in the conference room at Bowling Green, you are in the same room as the swab dryer that we bought and set aside for them, but they will not take it at this time. So I will just have to continue to, I don't know because I'm asking them to sign an MOU and they won't do it. I don't know. So I would love for them to have a swab dryer, but they don't at this time. So needless to say, we don't have a super strong partnership there. The SANE is really wonderful. She is really, really wonderful. Okay, what about this one?
That's the Vernon. It's short like that. It's a 1-4.
That's
Monroe.
Yeah, this is Monroe County Medical Center in Tompkinsville. Hopefully they will have 2 SANEs in the ER very soon. We paid registration for 2 of their SANE nurses to go through the training upcoming in July, one on day shift and one on night shift. They are very excited about that. And we are really working towards a strong relationship with them. I've had some great conversations with their ER director. They're very interested in strengthening their sexual assault response protocol and having the tools necessary to serve survivors. So I'm feeling very hopeful about MCMC right now. Obviously, they don't get a ton of calls, so we might not hear from them for a while. But I think that here recently they have really taken. I don't want to say taken an interest because that makes it sound like they didn't care before, but they have really focused on this area of care, and hopefully they will continue to grow in this direction. All right, what about this one? Yes. This is the medical center at Caverna. You're right, Jamie. They are a single floor space, like no upstairs. It's in Horse Cave technically. They do have a couple of SANEs in the ER at this point, and we do have a strong relationship with them. So we don't get a whole ton of calls out to them, just because I think a lot of times if people need this care, they're choosing to go to TJ. But when we do get call outs there, they're pretty easy to work with. So this is the location where you have to go in the emergency or in the ambulance bay doors after hours. And as Jamie said, thank you for reminding me, Jamie, you have to buzz yourself in after hours, tell them why you're there, and they'll let you in. Okay. All right. What about this one?
Logan.
Yes. This is Med Center Russellville, formerly known as Logan Memorial. They do have SANEs in the ER. They have a history of some issues, especially facing or working with minors. So we're kind of trying to work on that a little bit, but they do have SANEs in the ER and we have a pretty strong relationship there. So feel pretty good about them. Ever since Med Center took over, of course, it's been a little bit easier. So we're almost done. What about this one?
The Mid Center on Lovers Lane.
Yeah. Med Center Health Emergency Plus Urgent Care. This is the standalone emergency room from Med Center that is also on Lovers Lane. If you stand in the parking lot of this facility and look across the street, you can see the TriStar Lovers Lane location also. So very interesting placement here. But they do have SANEs in the ER and we have a really strong partnership there. Just recently we made it so that they had also a swab dryer. What we did actually is we gave a new swab dryer to the big hospital and the big hospital handed down their old swab dryer to this facility. So they do have one. I feel really strongly about this facility. It's very nice in there. They do a good job. They're very communicative and the SANE nurse, the primary SANE nurse there, her name is Janelle. She's really wonderful to work with. So feeling very good about this partner. And I anticipate that we will have some call outs there. I think the big hospital will still probably be our primary, but we'll see. Okay, that was all of our hospitals. Now we're going to talk law enforcement. And what I did here is I compiled some pictures of different types of law enforcement. And I want to talk about how you might identify those law enforcement folks without having to directly ask them what their affiliation is and what their name is. Now, with this said, there's no reason why, especially if the survivor is working with law enforcement, there is no reason why you can't just turn to a law enforcement officer and say, hey, what department do you work for? Who are you with? And what's your name? That information is very, very important, especially for our legal advocates to be able to do their job if a legal advocacy follow-up is requested. Okay. I hear from a lot of advocates like, oh yeah, the law enforcement was there, but I don't know who. You can talk to them and find out, especially if the survivor is willing to work with them. It is okay for you to get their information. Even if you don't share any other information with them and don't ask them any other questions, it's important for you to be able to document who was there with you so that if follow-up work is needed, we can do that effectively. Okay. But I understand that there might be circumstances where I ask people their names all the time, and then if I don't write them down immediately, I will forget. Or you might be confused because there's more than one agency there. That's okay. We're going to go through what their typical uniforms look like so that you maybe have some tools to identify at least the type of law enforcement professional that you're working with. So all of these pictures are of a specific type of law enforcement in our area. What do you notice about all of them?
Their colors of their uniform.
Yeah.
Yes.
The badge, what they did on there.
Yes. 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 These are sheriff's deputies. Or in some cases, sheriffs. Couple of things to notice before we talk about the badge. With sheriff's departments, you'll a lot of times see earth tones, browns, khakis, greens as part of their uniform. Of course, they'll oftentimes wear black and blue and other colors, but I noticed that khakis and greens are favored a lot with them. When we're talking sheriff's deputies, some of our keywords are, of course, deputy and sheriff, and their colors tend to be brown, green, khaki, black, gray, etc. Now, the colors are not a hard and fast rule, okay? So please don't rely on just color. What you can rely on with sheriff's deputies is their badge. Their insignia is always going to have some form of star shape to it. You can see it circled here in this picture of folks from the Warren County Sheriff's Office. I also put some examples of sheriff's badges from our area. Of course, Monroe County and Edmonson County here stick with the classic star shape, whereas Simpson County Sheriff's Office have a circle shaped badge with the star in the middle. But if you see a star, that means you're working with Sheriff's Department. What about these folks? Yes.
Badge, not a star.
Yes, a badge, not a star. Absolutely. Also, this picture here in the middle, I laugh at such an interesting pose that this gentleman struck as he was responding to a situation. It makes me giggle every time. Okay. With our police officers, you see a larger variety of colors: black, blue, gray, red, khaki green, and yellow and gold. You also see the badge shape. Now, the badge shapes will vary. So if you look here at our picture, Scottsville Police Departments is a circle. Glasgow Police Departments is shaped kind of like a diamond. Russellville Police Department, it's like a traditional badge shape. And then Franklin Police Department is a less pointy badge. I don't really know what to call this shape. But you'll see that there are not stars included in any of theirs, or most of the time there's not a star included in it because that's the sheriff's insignia. And you'll notice the difference in colors here. The keywords are officer and also chief. So if we're talking about the head of a sheriff's department, that is the sheriff. If we're talking about the head of a police department, that's the chief of police.
Hey, Mallory, there was a good point. All of those are shield shapes, like for fighting, like shields. All of the shapes of those. That makes sense.
She said they were all shields, like for fighting and
Protect.
And protection, yes.
Back in the day, so I think they're all shield shaped.
Yes. Well, yes, except for Scottsville Police Departments is a circle, but yes.
it's a Spartan shield.
Yeah. Oh, you're right, Jamie. It is like a Spartan shield. There you go. All right. What about these friendly folks?
Yeah.
This is KSP. Yes, you'll know because they wear their funny hats and they wear all gray. Their insignia is also a circle, but they also will have a badge, like a metal badge shaped badge on their chest most of the time. They're usually pretty easy to spot. The key word here being trooper. Their color is gray. Now, I say all of this with the caveat that if you're talking about a detective, detectives are a lot of times in plain clothes or out of uniform. Okay. So you might encounter a detective who has a dress shirt and khakis on, and it'll be harder to tell which agency they're with. And that's a case where you really just need to talk to them. Okay. But please make sure that you're getting this information, that you're being observant when we're doing emergency advocacy so that we can have an accurate representation of what happened in that space. Okay. Here's my last point, and then I'm going to turn it over to Katie Poindexter, and that's on the Healing Voices surveys. So here's the deal. Healing Voices surveys are something that KSAP requires of us. They collect anonymous data about medical and legal advocacy. I should have said at the top, what I am talking about are the Healing Voices surveys that occur after emergency advocacy. I realize that there are also Healing Voices surveys associated with the clinical department. I, as you may remember, am not a member of the clinical department, and so I cannot speak to that process. What I am talking about here with the Healing Voices surveys only pertains to emergency and legal advocacy. Okay. The purpose of them is to provide anonymous data about the services that we provide to KSAP, and then KSAP is supposed to process that data and then turn it back over to us so that we can use it to inform our processes. And they also use it to inform some of their legislative priorities, or just generally inform the work that they do. Now, the surveys, I would not call them comprehensive necessarily. Sometimes, especially a legal advocacy survey, is going to be maybe a little bit confusing for you to fill out. The reason for that is the legal advocacy survey is used after the work that Karen and Cindy do, like going to court and all of those associated activities. And it's also used after emergency legal advocacy, either at a police department or in the hospital. Okay. So there are lots of questions on that survey that maybe don't apply to you. Don't be tripped up by that. You still have to do it. And I'll explain exactly when you have to do them here in just a moment. If you go on an emergency advocacy call, you must do at least one survey. There is no situation where you do not do a survey and you have gone on an emergency advocacy call. You must complete one because KSAP says, because they compare our numbers. Hope Harbor reported that they responded to, 17 emergency advocacy requests this quarter, and we only got 10 survey responses from them. So they're not completing their surveys. So that's not good. So we can't be doing that. We have to complete surveys because KSAP says so. When do we do a survey? For medical advocacy, you have to do a survey if you respond to a hospital. That's regardless of any other circumstance on the call. I don't really care what happened on the call. If you went to the hospital, you have to do a medical advocacy survey. Now, legal advocacy. If you respond to a law enforcement location, like a police department or a sheriff's office, to provide emergency advocacy, then you also have to do a legal advocacy survey. And if you respond to a hospital for emergency advocacy, and you interact with law enforcement in conjunction with the situation. So that can be being in the room while they ask the survivor questions. It can be liaising with law enforcement for the survivor. If you talk to law enforcement in conjunction with the situation, not just like, hey, how you doing? You need to complete a legal advocacy survey. Okay. Now, like I said, there are lots of questions on the legal advocacy survey that are not going to apply to an emergency advocacy situation. For example, a prosecutor is never going to be present at an emergency advocacy situation. And there are questions in the survey about prosecutors. Just do your best. If it's an option to leave it blank, leave it blank. If it's an option to say does not apply or not relevant or whatever that verbiage might be, then select that. Just do your best. Okay. I wish that I could say that the surveys are comprehensive and make sense after emergency advocacy, but that's not always the case. So do your best. If you have questions, please contact Katie or I, and we will talk you through it or help you decide whether or not you need to do a legal advocacy survey. Katie will check your record. And if you said that you completed a survey, great. If you did not check off on your record that you completed a survey, she will reach out to you and say, hey, did you complete your surveys? No? Okay, then you need to do them post haste. They need to get done as soon as possible. Okay, I have one other thing to cover about this, and I did not include a slide on it because I did not get the information in time from KSAP. So the Healing Voices surveys, there are multiple ways to complete them. I'm going to talk about one way to complete them that I think is the easiest way. If you have a way to complete them that is different, please talk to Katie and I separately. Last year, at the beginning of last fiscal year, we made little cards with QR codes on the back that were advocacy pocket guides. And then also the QR codes took you directly to each survey, the medical advocacy survey and the legal advocacy survey. Those QR codes are still good. And those links that you may have, I think we also sent out the links. Those links are still good. But after today, starting July 1, you will need to use new links and new QR codes to complete these surveys. The reason for that has been explained to me. It does not necessarily compute, but that is not important. What is important is that you need to use new links and new QR codes. Katie and Burr worked very hard to make new pocket guides with new QR codes on the back. Those are available at the Glasgow and Bowling Green office. After this meeting, I will send out an email with the link to the Healing Voices surveys. Moving forward past today, please make sure that when you do emergency advocacy, that you are using the updated links and QR codes. Because if you don't, then they won't count appropriately and it'll look like we're not doing our surveys when we are. Okay? Now is the time for questions. Lay it on me.
I have 3.5 questions.
Okay, please.
Okay, is there a place or a handout somewhere that has the hospitals with their addresses that
Yes.
I can print out and keep? Oh, great. Where do I access that?
Katie Poindexter made that earlier this month or last month or recently. It's on Canva. When I send out the Healing Voices survey, I will gladly send that as well.
Great. The half question is the new places, the TriStar and the BG Med Center on Lovers Lane, are they open 24 hours a day?
Yes.
Great. Okay, next question. The TriStar one that you said they don't have an MOU with us, are they still required to call us? Yeah, okay, great. All right. Last question, Mallory. When we were going over all the different uniforms.
Yes.
If this were to occur in Mammoth Cave National Park.
Oh, good point.
You have a park ranger that has to respond as well, or is it just going to be like KSP or?
That's a great question, Jamie. So as Jamie's pointing out, if something occurs in Mammoth Cave, and that actually is pertinent because that would also cover Great Onyx Job Corps So there is like a population of people that are in their jurisdiction at all times. The park rangers typically, yes, would respond. Now, it is possible that they would turn that case directly over to KSP. I have never been on a case that involved the park rangers, so I can't speak to that necessarily. My expectation is that they would turn it over to KSP, but it could be that they would conduct their own investigation.
And normally they do because a lot of times, like if they find like a missing body in the national park or whatever, it goes to KSP.
Well, I'm just asking because that's federal property. So
Yeah.
then is it FBI? Like who does that? You know?
Yeah, I don't honestly know the answer to that.
Okay.
I think I've been on a call now already where it's actually been like Barron or like one of the county sheriff's offices also.
It should be.
It was like, it was right on it, too.
Yeah.
That made me think of technically like assaults that happen on campus, WKU police could be at the hospital as well. They're also listed on the handout that I made of all of our partners. And then I made a SharePoint folder with all of the backup stuff that also has the updated links in it. So I can show you all how to access that if needed.
Yes. That's a great point, Katie. Thank you for bringing that up. So Katie is going to talk about stuff that maybe is more relevant to what's in that folder, but every single person on staff has access to the staff SharePoint. In the staff SharePoint, there's a folder called Crisis Intervention. Correct me if I'm wrong, Katie, that's where it is?
Yeah. And then there's like in the crisis intervention folder, there's a backup folder that
Yes.
has everything.
In there will be the link. Well, what did you do with the links to the Healing Voices survey? Are they in there?
Yes, they're in there now.
Yep. They're the links to the Healing Voices survey. All of our records are in the crisis intervention folder. The instructions for safe stays, the instructions for troubleshooting the hotline, the instructions for transferring the hotline, and the document that Katie made about all of our partners with the hospital and locations and phone numbers, and the police department information with their non-emergency phone numbers. All of that will be in the SharePoint.
Would it
Okay.
be too much to ask to put the safety plans in that folder since backup often has to, not often, but has to access it, or is that?
Since they're already on the SharePoint, I don't want to have them in two different places and then it get confusing.
I gotcha.
I'm also going to add the link to the crisis intervention schedule. So like if you don't see the email, then you'll have it there for the volunteer information, but the CRS number won't be on that schedule.
Yeah. Okay. Anyone questions about anything that I talked about?
Oh, I also have large print in the pocket guide if anyone needs it.
Mm-hmm. All right, I'm going to turn it over to Katie.
You're still going to have to click the slides.
Yep, I got you. You ready?
Yep. Okay, so records. I'm not sure what's on the next slide actually. Okay. So we're kind of drilling this in today, I guess, but we need to document our actions and timestamps. We need to know when you respond to things. This kind of helps us gather like information on our response times and making sure that our advocates are getting there in a timely manner and that we can document and track your time accurately as well. Also, we need to record survivor information and interactions. We need to see what's going on when you're providing advocacy. We need to know more than just like, I responded to this place. And then also gather follow-up information as needed. So there will be times where the survivor doesn't want to follow up and they don't feel comfortable giving you a bunch of their information, and that's okay. But if they want a follow-up, it is completely okay and encouraged to say, okay, do you mind if I ask you a few questions to get information so that we can follow up for you? And then if they don't want to answer anything, you can just skip that question. But the more information you can get from them, the better, like their birth date, the county they live in, their contact information, of course, if they want to follow up. But those things can be important for making their chart. And so that like the therapist and Sheila doesn't have to ask, a bunch of questions again. So just document everything you can get. But if you don't have any information, still fill out as much as you have and turn the record in. I do get records from people who decline advocacy that we only have like their name and maybe like 2 other things circled. That's okay, but just try to get as much as you can. Also, records should be completed for every hotline call and emergency advocacy, even if the survivor declines our services. And then the only exceptions to the hotline calls that you don't have to record is if you like answer it and then no one's there on the other end. And then after 30 seconds or so, you can hang up. You don't have to record that. You don't have to record spam unless it's happening frequently. And then that might be something we have to like call or like report to the FCC or something. All right. We can go on. All right. If you want Mallory to be aware of something that happened with a systems partner, so law enforcement, medical staff, whatever that might be, you can complete a systems record and email it to her. Those are in the crisis intervention folder on the SharePoint. I'm pretty sure there's also some printed out down here, but if you ever need that, I also have some printed out in my office. So as long as they're up there, you can grab them.
Katie, if I can I'm only going to do this to you once.
You're good.
Listen, guys, I have been getting a lot of systems records 2 and 3 weeks late after the event occurred. If you have a concern that warrants a systems record and you need me to be aware of it, I need you to complete the systems record and turn it into me quickly. Okay. It's hard for me to respond to these situations at all in the first place. It's especially hard for me to come to a partner 3 weeks late and be like, hey, 3 weeks ago, this thing happened. Can you deal with it? That it just doesn't land well. So please make sure if you have a systems concern to let me know. If you, for whatever reason, cannot fill out a systems record, just call me and say, hey, Mallory, I have a systems concern. Do you have time to talk about it? And I will fill out the systems record. My preference, though, is that you do it in your own words and then scan it and email it to me. And if there's a physical copy, leave it on my desk. Okay?
Okay. Also, only use the records that are on the SharePoint. Don't use any of the other copies, or you can obviously use the ones that are printed out in the office. Just make sure that you have the most up to date ones. And then all records are turned into me. If I'm not here, then you can scan them to my email, but just let me know like they're on their way. And don't put them in Collaborate unless me or Mallory asks you to, just because sometimes I get a record that doesn't have a lot of information and I can kind of piece it together with someone we've called before. And if you haven't seen that other record, you would have no way of knowing that. So like that helps that. It also helps me keep up with this person went to an advocacy call. Okay, I need the hotline record now. Another thing about the hotline records is sometimes when we get those dispatch calls in the office from staff, I don't get those records from the hotline. So just make sure that you still are filling those out too, even if it's in the text message. Let me know through the record as well that we got that hotline call. And then if you go on accompaniment with a volunteer, please offer to fill out the record with them for the first time so that you can kind of show them how it's done. And then also complete the surveys together. You will only need to do 1 record and 1 survey per that visit. You each do not do a record and survey. Okay. And then Mallory has included some pictures on how to get to the SharePoint. So I'll just let her click through that.
Yeah, so this is what the SharePoint homepage looks like. And you want to click on the Hope Harbor staff one. You might have some others. I have some others, but you might only have the Hope Harbor staff one. I don't know what yours looks like. Click on that. Click on this that's circled in red. And then go over here to the crisis intervention folder on the right-hand side and click on that. And then you'll see here is the systems record, the emergency advocacy record, and the hotline record, and then also the backup folder. I have been trying to put these 2 other things in the backup folder and it keeps kicking them out. So I have to work on that. But everything that you need, the records are here, and then the backup folder has a lot of the other information that you might need.
All right. When it comes to transferring the hotline, It's gonna be hard to like go onto the site and do it through here, but I have printed out for everyone the instructions for that. And then I've also printed out in troubleshooting instructions. So anytime, like if you find that you're having trouble logging into the website, then please try and do all the steps that are on the troubleshooting page, because usually that will fix the issue. Also, as Mallory said at the beginning, it's best if you are doing this on a laptop. I found that most of the time on your phone, it will not work, especially if you don't have like third-party cookies. You're not allowing those, and depending on what browser you use on your phone, it probably won't work. But that's not to say it's not impossible. Just be mindful of that for sure. If you want me to help you figure out how to transfer the hotline, then you can meet with me after this. Or if you have any questions about the instructions, like I definitely don't mind to meet with anyone. But before you take the line, just as a reminder, have access to a quiet and confidential space. Also make sure you turn off any music or TVs, because that will sound like someone is there with you in the room and it will make people uncomfortable. Uh, Also make sure your phone is charged. I think if you're on backup, your phone should always be charged anyways. Keep records readily available, have access to the internet. Also, there's a resource guide that Chloe has made that is available through Loop. If you do not have access to that, let me know. I have given the volunteers instructions if they need anything off that guide to contact backup, because as of now, there's no way for them to get access to that on Loop. And so they will be reaching out to you. Once Chloe gets back, we're going to figure out a way to get volunteers access to that. But until then, like they'll reach out to you if they need like resources in Allen County, for example. And then also have access to the schedule. As Mallory said, it's important that you know who's on call, just so that you can be mindful of who you're going to get a call from or who you will need to dispatch or that kind of thing. All right. And then when it's time, like let's say that you had to be on the hotline shift, or maybe you're walking a volunteer through their first shift, or maybe you're coming into the office and transferring it in the morning. Please call the hotline to let the person know that you're transferring it. That step is not optional. Please call the hotline number, not the volunteer's personal number. Just call the hotline, because something could have happened and like backup could have the line. Also gather information about the previous shift. So did we dispatch anyone? Is the CRS on a call? And so now you would have to respond to any advocacy calls. Did a volunteer miss their shift? Do we have a follow-up, or do we have a safety plan involved? And then log into the portal, save your preferred number with those instructions, wait for the previous advocate to call back to check the line, and then answer calls, and fill out records for the duration of the shift. And then once the shift is about over, the next advocate should call, and then you should relay any important information from that day. So that doesn't mean like you need to tell them about every single call you got. It's really only pertinent information that they need to know. And then also you need to check the hotline to make sure that it transferred. That step is also not optional, because we have had issues in the past with it not transferring. So we need to make sure that it's going to the correct person so that there's no lapse in coverage. I don't know if I'm getting ahead of myself, but just in case it's not on down. If you ever find that the hotline didn't transfer at first, or like you called it and still going to the office or whatever, just go ahead and just re-enter the information and see if that does it. Just resave it. And then after that, there are other steps to take. All right, so this is just like a big version of the instructions that you have in front of you. So again, call the advocate, let them know you're taking over, then log in. And then click view all features. Everything else can be ignored. And then hit call forwarding. Just that first arrow, and then type the number in call forward always. Make sure that it's always toggled on. There's been one time where I've logged in and it's been toggled off. So if you ever find that, just make sure that that top one is turned on and then always hit save. Everything else you can ignore and should ignore. All right, and then troubleshooting. So, like I said, I did include instructions for troubleshooting issues with the hotline, but this is in regard to assisting volunteers. So, if the next advocate has not taken the line and the volunteer cannot cover that next shift, because some people will, like, for example, a lot of times if Connie is on call and the next volunteer hasn't taken over, she'll just cover the next shift. But there are also volunteers who aren't able to do that. So they will contact you and say, hey, the next volunteer hasn't called. So then it's up to you to kind of manage the schedule in that way and figure out who can cover for them. So first, ask them if they've contacted the person who's supposed to be on the shift, because sometimes they don't. And then it's like, well, they might have forgotten. So contact the volunteer yourself, check in with them, say, hey, are you still able to take the shift? Please call them, leave a voicemail, and then if they don't answer, you can also text them, but don't just text them. If they say like, oh, I forgot, and it's like 15-30 minutes after their shift time, they can still take it over, or at any point they can take it over. Just please update me about that, their change in time. If they're not available and a CRS is on call, then contact the CRS to take over the hotline. If the CRS is currently on a call, like at the hospital, then you would have to take over the hotline until the CRS is back or until that volunteer calls and takes over. If there's not a CRS on call, then you would have to take the line automatically. And then again, make sure that any changes made to the schedule are emailed to me just so that I can make sure everyone's time is tracked correctly. I want to make sure that the volunteers who are on call have all of the correct hours and that the volunteers who miss shifts aren't taking credit for other people's time. And okay, and then if the website's not working for the volunteer, then offer to transport for them. They might also reach out to the advocate on call before them and ask them for help. That's also fine. There's been some instances where they also call the CRS. That's not a big deal. Obviously, it's better if they call backup. But just as long as someone can transfer the line for them, that's great. If it's not working for anyone, then please follow the steps on the troubleshooting instructions, and ultimately you might have to call BGMU. If the hotline's not forwarding to their phone, again, resave their number and then check the line again. And then if the CRS is available, if it's still not transferring and the CRS is available, have them cover the shift. And then if not, if you can transfer it to your phone, then go ahead and do that until you can get the problem fixed. All right, and then Mallory has included some instructions on clearing your history, because a lot of times if you've already allowed third-party cookies, all you need to do is clear your browsing history. And this you might have to do more frequently because as you keep on using the site, it adds more to your history, right? So this is if you use the or which platform is this, Mallory? Is this Chrome or is this Microsoft Edge?
It's Edge.
Okay, yeah. So this is just you use Edge, but it's also very similar to Chrome if you use that instead. But if you need help with any of this, just let me know and I can help. Also, there's a lot of websites and instructions on different kinds of browsers too. So also feel free to do some research as well if you have time. All right, and then if those steps do not work, then you will need to call BGNU to have them transfer the line for us. Their technical assistance during working hours, so Monday through Friday, 7:30 to 4:30, that's their number, but they also have a 24-hour dispatch. So if it's after hours, which is when we have most of these issues, then you will need to call them. Let them know that you're from Hope Harbor and you need to access our BGMU Fiber or voice account. And let them know we have a hotline that we forward to other phones and we need to transfer it to a different number. Also, maybe kind of let them know that this is very time sensitive, just so that they might have more of an urgency with it. Because if not, they might not understand like the urgency, like I said.
I will add this because I just recently had to do this. What happens when you call 24/7 dispatch is you speak to a dispatcher and then they connect you with the on-call tech person. So what will happen is you will call, describe what's going on, they'll take your number, they'll end the call with you, then they'll go and call the on-call tech person, and then that person will call you back. So it is not a quick process. I wish it was, it is not. So just when you are coming to the point where you're like, okay, I think we're going to have to call BGMU, please let the volunteer or the CRS or whoever know, hey, this might take a little bit. I'm going to work on it, but please just be patient with me. Do you have any time sensitive things going on? How can we try to troubleshoot this? Just sometimes it just will take some time for them to get it done. And whether that's because they're not moving with urgency or that's just the way that their system works, I don't know, but it's never immediate when you call them.
All right. Now when it comes to the schedule, I know that sometimes this can be the most confusing thing of like when volunteers miss a shift and now you have to kind of rework everything. So we'll go over that. So every shift should have a hotline volunteer, a hospital volunteer, a CRS, and staff backup. But depending on scheduling and everything, that it doesn't always work that way. So this is in a perfect world, there's always these 4 people. But there will be times where there's not a CRS. And then there will be times where we don't have volunteers to fill the shifts either. So this is kind of a general chain of command. I know this is a lot of words on the screen right now, but the volunteer will generally contact backup if they can't cover a shift anymore. If the next person or the scheduled person for the next shift is not responding, if the person scheduled for advocacy is not responding and they need to be dispatched, or if the hospital requested an advocate for an incarcerated survivor, they also might call if it's like a conflict of interest situation as well. And that could be either in person at the hospital and you need to go provide emergency advocacy, or it could be on the hotline and you would need to take over the hotline for a little bit. So if they're no longer able to cover a shift or that next person's not responding, then you will contact that or the CRS to cover that open shift. If the CRS is available, then they will cover the shift until the volunteer is available, who it was scheduled, or until the end of that shift. If they're not available, then you will cover the shift until the volunteer or the CRS is available. So let's say the CRS is on a hospital call, and so you take over the hotline. The CRS will need to take over the hotline when they get back. And then if the advocate's not responding, again, the CRS, if they're available, they should always go before backup. And then once they're back, they would go to, another call. For volunteers, we tell them they do not respond to more than 1 call a day. That does not apply to the CRS team or staff backup. Unless like they have a really difficult call and are just like, I really can't do this, they should be expected to go on multiple calls if needed. But if they're not available, then you should respond. Also email Mallory if a CRS was scheduled, but they said they couldn't go. Also do the same if they do that for the hotline. They should always be able to cover the hotline or provide emergency advocacy when needed. That's the only thing that their job is to do. So if they're
We are paying them to
Yeah.
be on call, so that I'm glad you have this chain of command sheet.
Yeah. And then email me with any updates. So if there's not a CRS, then volunteers ideally will cover both hotline and hospital shifts, and then the fail-safe would be backup. So any uncovered or unfilled shifts are filled by backup. If there's no volunteers, then the hotline will always be covered by the CRSs first. Backup should never cover the hotline if there's a CRS available. because of the way that we track time. Also, after that, the fail-safe would be me, Mallory, or any other available staff. So like if the CRS has a hotline and you go to an emergency advocacy call, then you need to let me, Mallory, or someone else know, like, hey, ideally it's me or Mallory first. But like, hey, I'm going to a hospital call. There's no more advocates on call right now. So I would need to then respond. If we got like another call. If there's no hotline volunteer, then again, the CRS would fill in. Ideally, there would be volunteers for hospital calls, and then backup would be the fail-safe for that. And then if there's no hospital volunteer, hopefully there's a hotline volunteer, then the hospital would be CRS, and then the fail-safe is staff backup. Is there any questions about that? Or I guess,
You want to wait till the
I
end?
guess, yeah, we can wait until the end. Yeah, sorry. All right, if a CRS is dispatched for advocacy and is scheduled for a hotline shift later in the day, then backup should only cover the hotline until the CRS is able to take over. This has been happening more frequently lately just because people are not as available during the summer, and especially towards the end of the school year. But like I said, the only time backup should cover the hotline is if there's not a CRS available or a volunteer available. Because when you're on the hotline, you have to track the full time you're on the hotline as work time. But if you're just on an advocacy shift, you only track the time that you're responding to an emergency advocacy request. So it helps with flex and making sure that we can all handle our in-office commitments the next day. And again, that's why the CRSs are on staff. And then again, if a volunteer misses a shift, email me. If a CRS misses something, email Mallory. And then unless there's no one else on shift with you, there's no reason to let me know about a missed shift that night, or Mallory or Melissa. Unless it's like, hey, all the volunteers are not available anymore, and now it's only me and the CRS. And then it's like, okay, yeah, call me for sure. But otherwise, if it's not an emergency, just email me and I'll get to it. All right, and then language access. So this doesn't happen often, but so it's really easy to get out of practice with this. I personally have never had to use an interpreter. So this would also be new to me if I had to do it, but it's not hard. I think the hardest thing is understanding how to do like the three-way call on your phone, which I can help you with that if you don't know how to do that. But when someone calls and they are speaking another language that's not a language that you speak, then you can ask them to hold, and then you want to conference in an interpreter. I did pass out instructions for this as well, but then you'll want to dial the number and provide the access code that's unique to Hope Harbor, so it lets them know like which agency is using the service so that they can bill us properly. And then select the language needed. I think it's 1 for Spanish, and then 2, you click for like all others, and it'll go down the list. If you're not sure what language the person speaks, I think there's also an input for that, so that someone can get on there and help you figure out what language. But you can also try to ask the survivor what language they need as well before you get the interpreter on. Then when the interpreter is there, you want to document their name or ID number. Ideally, it's the ID number. If you get both their name and ID number, you can put that, but really we mainly need the ID. If for some reason the call gets cut off, this has happened, and then you call again and it's a different interpreter, put both IDs on the record just so that we can be aware of what happened. And then briefly explain the nature of the call and the purpose of our hotline to the interpreter. So you say like, I'm on a sexual assault hotline. Someone called, I haven't gotten a chance to, speak with them in depth yet, or something like that, whatever is going on. And then once you get with the survivor back on the call, you want to confirm that they consent to the interpreter being there. So you can just simply like ask, is it okay if this interpreter is here? And then the interpreter will translate that for you. If they say no, then you might just have to let them know, like, unfortunately, I can't provide advocacy without this interpreter, but if you feel comfortable in the future, you can always call back. Or, offer if they want to come into the office and speak with us in person with an interpreter there, that might make them feel more comfortable too. But usually they will consent to using one. And then provide advocacy as usual, speak directly to the survivor, not the interpreter. Don't say, oh, will you tell them this? Will you tell them that? Just say whatever you need to say and let the interpreter translate it. It may take a little bit longer because not everything's a one-to-one translation, but they will translate it as accurately as they can. All right, and then safe stays. I meant to print out the instructions for this, but they will be in the backup folder. I'm gonna double check that everything's in there, but I was trying to add stuff before today. But if you are trying to access it and it's not there, just let me know. But this is safe stays. If you don't know, or just as a reminder, we have limited funding to provide a survivor with up to 2 nights in a hotel, and we pay for that stay directly, so they can check in anonymously and free of charge to them. And so it can be a really great resource for them if they are feeling unsafe or don't have anywhere else to go after the hospital, or when they call the hotline. So also it's important to know that if they do want to book anonymously, that might limit the number of hotels, but typically like the Super 8 is usually available in Bowling Green. Also, there is not most of the available hotels will be in Bowling Green. So if you're outside of Bowling Green, there may not be any hotel that we can put them in, unfortunately. It kind of depends on the hotels agreeing to be a part of Safe Stays. It's not really on us to build that partnership necessarily. And then also, because we have a finite resource for this, we should exhaust all other housing options before telling the survivor about this resource. So I've advised volunteer advocates to see if they have friends or family member they can stay with, or see if there's availability in any shelters that they feel comfortable with. But if they don't feel comfortable, if they don't have that support person to stay with, then we can provide them with this if they're comfortable with this. Some people will also decline staying in a hotel, and that's 100% their choice. But they have to have transportation. You can also work with them to find that transportation as well. But if they don't have any way to get to the hotel, we can't provide them with that stay. And it's something that you should discern and assess before we book, so that we don't pay for the hotel and no one shows up.
And I will say a lot of times, sorry, Katie, a lot of times the hospital social worker or the hospital itself can help the survivor get like a taxi waiver or something like that to get them to where they need to go. So maybe not with some of our smaller hospitals, but especially in Bowling Green, a lot of times the hospital has programs that can help people with transportation.
Yeah, and we can't expect this, but sometimes if law enforcement's working with survivor, they'll offer to drive, but not always. So we can't just expect that will happen.
Let me ask a question if you don't mind. Like, for instance, a lot of times we end up answering calls that for whatever reason we're asking to have runs on the department. If they have transportation funds, would it be appropriate to reach out to their on-call website, how we were working on against collaboratively? Would you all give them a list, or would you provide that,
I mean, I would say that would be like a transportation resource. So, I mean, I wouldn't, if the survivor is okay with that disclosure, then I wouldn't see an issue with it.
I didn't know that they do that after hours. So, yes, I don't know. That would be some questions. Maybe we would, to know before we think about
Yeah.
resource.
And we would be what I'm hearing is we would be in contact with Brass already because we had tried to reach out and had to get to the courthouse and
So possible. Okay, so then we thought that they already qualified for their service.
And if they're not providing services, are they able to go, oh, we can give them a rise? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't hurt to ask.
Worse than that. But you're very permission.
Yeah, just make sure you're not giving survivor information out without the permission. Yeah, so they must have transportation. So whatever that looks like, whatever is safest for them to, we don't want to put them in an unsafe situation, but we cannot transport, volunteers can't transport, and CRSs can't either. Also, only full-time advocates can set it to stay. So the CRSs are not, they don't have logins, the volunteers do not have logins, and you should not share your login with them. Also, before booking the hotel, try to contact Shanna to see if there's available funding. I'm not sure what steps you would like to be taken if you're not available, but just try to contact Shanna if she is available to approve that.
I have a question. I don't know.
Yeah, we can hold it for the end. So the volunteers will call you. So a lot of times when we use this, it has been a volunteer kind of directing this. So they'll call you first, explain the situation, and ask if we have available funding. So you can tell them, I'm not sure. I will contact Shanna and then get back to you, and then, get it approved or whatever. And then you'll have to call the volunteer back to get the information from the survivor, make sure that, or ask if they want it to be anonymous or not. And then you'll get that information from the volunteer. You'll log into the Safe Stays website using your personal information, your username and password that you should have created in May, I think. But if you did not get a chance to do that, let Shanna know and she can send you a new link. So, okay, perfect. Yeah, so use your personalized username and password. Search for available hotels and select the best option. So cheap, safe, something that the survivor can get to with transportation. Also, we try to book something that's around like a gas station that they can walk to or somewhere that they can go get food or groceries. But whatever's available is good. And then enter the information needed to book the stay, work with the advocate to get that information. If you have to ask the survivor questions, and then wait until the booking is confirmed. So between 12 and 6 a.m., a link to confirm the stay will be sent to your, or 12 a.m. and 6 a.m. A link will be sent to your email that you used to log in. So you'll have to click that link to confirm that you want to book, and then you'll have to wait a little bit longer, and then they'll confirm that it's booked. It's because they don't have the same people on, as they do during office hours to coordinate those things. And then once confirmed, you'll relay that information to the advocate or survivor if you're the one working with them directly, and then they'll be on their way. So this is all in the instructions that are going to be you're going to be able to access on the SharePoint. There's also a general Hope Harbor login that you can still use, but do not use it if it's after 12 a.m. because then you won't be able to confirm the booking. But if it's 5 p.m. and your login's not working, then go ahead and use the Hope Harbor general login so that we can get that stay booked. Okay. Now, yeah.
Okay. More questions, guys, sorry. Okay, we're gonna go backwards because we might need to see some slides. So with the safe stay, basically what I heard was Shanna's on call 24/7.
Or Shanna wrote down, I think I will get with Katie, or backup can get with me. I feel like maybe that may be the better of the two options. Backup could reach out to me before the end of the workday. I can tell you right now, we have plenty of funds to put multiple people up these days. So
That's what I wrote down. Like, can this be a simple something that's included in the email that you send out, like safe space funding, yes or no?
I would rather that not go out to all the volunteers. I would rather that be a a backup notification.
Or even quarterly, when we're looking at those ones, if we knew roughly, like, we should be fine, I don't know, something like that.
Let us know when it gets low. Just let us know when it gets low.
Yeah, we haven't used it very often.
Yeah, the only other thing is the $200 limit per client, because it may be a client that we've already seen, but I don't know that we have access either.
I would not have access.
It's during the day, and we can do those like the checks there, but it is, so that's the only other thing.
Katie and I will collaborate a little bit more on figuring out
I
what the
feel like
best
it's an
option
easy way
is.
to do it rather than to call you at 3 a.m.
Yeah,
Well, you need to know, so when it comes to, but it'll have our email addresses now instead of the whole part.
I always get notified.
Well, but that's something we could just say, hey, we did a safe stay. You should be expecting an invoice or something.
yeah, if you do a safe stay, indicated that on the record.
So, and along those lines, I have run into a situation once where the client arrived, they wouldn't let them, and they had been dropped off there by another community partner to be able to stay there. And once they arrived, they wouldn't allow them to check in. And then it was back and forth that they made them stay a long time without letting them check in. But then come to find out that once I finally got a hold of the people directly and said, what's going on? We've been booking these through this process forever here. Found out that there was like a reason they wouldn't tell the person, but like they were banned from their property. And so they wouldn't let them move in. Anyway, so I had to get with Reload Share or Safe Stays and tell them, like, we need to find another place. Please cancel this reservation. They didn't notify us, or maybe didn't know because it was an anonymous name until the person arrived. But it was quite a bit of a 2.5 hour or 3 hour process on trying to get all of that done with that person. But we did find one that they could walk to. That was close. That was cost. That they were able to stay at. So there may be some instances like that if you want me to reach out to me or whatever in those situations. You know. Or you can troubleshoot those yourself. Just call the main line to the hotel and say, I need to speak to someone physically at the hotel right now and see what's going on. They can give you more information.
Two things about using a translator. One thing that we didn't talk about was when we encounter someone that we need to use a translator for. In the counseling world, I don't know if this applies in the advocacy world. It cannot be like Google. It cannot be a family member that's in a
Yeah.
phone.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
And then a long time ago, Leda did a training for us on this. And there was a phrase that she gave us that basically said, don't hang up, but it was in Spanish. Does anybody remember that?
Yeah.
There was a phrase that she was basically said, tell them this so that they don't hang up while you're trying to do the three-way call.
yeah. I would just ask if they can. I would just say in English, like, I'm gonna put you on hold, because like if they don't speak Spanish, and that phrase is not really helpful.
Right.
So I
I
think,
don't know if anybody remembers.
yeah,
Coral Day? Something Coral Day. Oh, okay.
It's in our book, it's in our.
it isn't the, yeah.
And then the shift coverage slide. Mallory, can you go back to that where it had all the different examples?
Yeah.
Right there. Where it said, the second one that says no volunteers, the CRS is on hotline, the staff is on hospital call, and then Katie and Mallory are the fail-safe.
Mhm.
If that is the situation and we get a hospital call that comes in, do you want us to ask the CRS to go to the hospital and the staff to take the crisis line until the CRS comes back? Or do you want?
You can do that.
Well, you were saying something about like, it's very specific about tracking the hours.
It would be the same, because you would be either at the hospital for that duration until the CRS is, or until you get back home, or you're on the hotline until the CRS is back. So it's the same. So it's whatever you're comfortable with. Yeah.
I will say, I think what we're asking in this case, or in these types of cases where we're we're in a position where we're having to use our fail safes or we're not having as much coverage as we would like. What we want is for staff to talk to the CRS person and determine what is going to create the best outcome in which we are able to respond the most efficiently and there's a minimal impact on operations of the office. So what is going to create the least amount of flex time and what will allow us to respond to the hospital call or the emergency advocacy call the quickest. So I live in Glasgow. If it's me and a CRS and we are it for the night and we get a hospital call, I'm going to take over the hotline, and that CRS, unless it's someone who doesn't live in Bowling Green, is going to go to the call in Bowling Green because the time is no different, either whether I respond or they respond. Actually, it would be longer for me to respond if you count in the drive time, and they're closer, so they'll be able to respond faster to the hospital. So it is a little bit of a conversation to determine what makes the most sense here, what has the least amount of impact. We expect you guys to hold in both hands at the same time what is in the best interest of getting advocacy to this person in a timely fashion, and also what is in the best interest of Hope Harbor. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I just got confused and she was talking about tracking time.
Yeah,
so I
sorry.
think maybe they just need to stay on hot.
One other thing, and this just relates to, I know the resource guide on Loop is like updated on a regular basis, but since I don't think all of our staff use Loop at all, can we go ahead and just download a copy with like the date of July 1st and then it's
Yeah.
updated into the backup folder?
So the issue with that is that, well,
No
one,
one has
it's
to-
locked. So Chloe has the page locked so that no one can edit it. And they have to unlock it for me to download it into Excel. And then when you download it into Excel, you have to reformat it and it's not really as user friendly. So we can do that. It's just gonna be a whole process for us to get that available. I will have to do that. Oh, it wouldn't let me do that. Okay, it wouldn't let me do that. I am gonna have to do that for volunteers. So once it's ready for volunteers, I can do that. But I'll resend it to staff, and then if you need help like learning the loop, then I can show you. It's super easy, and honestly, I think it's a little bit easier than the Excel sheet will be. It's with Microsoft, so you automatically have it. Yeah. Yeah.
I have Loop. Just gonna do that. Never access Loop.
Yeah, it's like a newer thing. I don't know how long it's been an app, but it's pretty easy. Yeah. There definitely is a learning curve to it.
And the only other thing I wanted to mention too is, and like Mallory, of course, I like the slides showing us where to find SharePoint, but if you're not accessing the online version of that, there's a kind of a different process that can happen. It shifts and changes a lot, so it's really nice if you can, the Hope Harbor staff SharePoint. So if we know we're getting ready to open or needing to go there, then if you're opening a Word document, if you go to the Word and click your Hope Harbor SharePoint, it will pull up those documents so you can find them there. So it's just, so if anybody needs help with that, I think I've got some directions, but they might not be exactly right now. I'll have to go back through those and look to see. Yeah.
Yeah, you should be able to access it for that too.
But I don't use I never log into OneDrive. It's always just on my computer and then I access the desktop apps most of the time. It's easier for me. So there is a little bit different step, but you're just trying to get the Hope Harbor SharePoint. So however you do that.
Once I make sure everything's in that folder, I can also send an email with it, and link it. Yeah. Any other questions?
No. I do have to say there's been Drew is in here a lot because he's been on a lot of calls lately. And I don't know if you've all done the inventory, but I know the advocacy closet was getting low on quite a few sizes and stuff. And I know we've been ordering a ton of stuff, so just let us know when that's it is. If we need to help fill bags or whatever, we can help do that. So we've had volunteers come in and need them. So
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't want to run out to the garage because I don't even know where to start. So
Oh, also that reminds me, when you're on backup, make sure that you bring back that backup bag because I've had to give a lot of volunteer bags out and I'm running low on bags to give to the new advocates. So just make sure that we're bringing in the backup bag and then taking it when we need it, so that all other people on backup can use it.
I think you got the extra bag on for last.
So
Oh, sit down. Oh, I forgot that was in.
they're in the drawer that's closest to the like half wall.
I'd like to throw some in that bag when I'm on.
Okay, I wanna make sure I understand it right, so like this weekend I'm on that. During the day of the third. I'm on backup, right, is that right, so like it starts at 8 a.m., okay.
Yeah. Yeah, you're on backup. Like if I'm on backup from Wednesday to Friday, then I'm on backup starting 8 a.m. on Wednesday to 8 a.m. on Friday.
But because it's a holiday, right, it's just that third is our holiday.
Right, so.
So that you got,
Yeah.
Until Monday morning.
Yeah.
Okay. If it's for us.
Yeah, the only difference is like the CRSs, the days that they're on call, they're only on call like on weekdays when the office is closed. And then yeah, just anytime the office is closed, the CRS is on call that full time, but they're not like CRS for tonight's not on call right now, but backup is technically.
Technically, yes, but if you, Rachel, are in a session, obviously, if we get an
Yeah.
emergency advocacy call or something comes up, then you are not expected to troubleshoot it during the workday.
Friday, I was, off and like, and then when you did the spreadsheet, and I was like, oh, I didn't think about. And then
Yeah, that's a good point. If you're off or if you take sick time, but it's like an appointment, if you don't let me know that you can't cover your backup shift, I'm just gonna assume that you took the workday off, but you're still covering backup. So if anything like that changes, like you're sick and you can't cover, let me know, because otherwise I'm gonna assume that like you took sick time for like an appointment or something and you're able to be on backup.
It's your responsibility. It's all of us. It's our responsibility to manage our own backup time. That includes signing up for shifts. And if there is a problem, letting Katie and or me know so that we can address that problem. But that's your responsibility, it's not our responsibility to watch your calendar and figure out what's going on with you. Every person on staff, it's our all shared responsibility to cover our own backup.
And then if anything like changes like after hours and you need to update the schedule, you can just reply to all and put whatever information you need. I know some people have done that, like when I've put the wrong number in or if things have changed after hours and I'm not available, that's more than okay to do. Definitely do that so the volunteers are aware of the correct information that's needed. So, yeah.
Well, Rachel will have to update my phone number now.
Yes, I'll have to make sure I have the correct one.
Oh, you usually. All right.
Yeah. But I always text the CRS and the advocate to people and say, I was seeing one of the email.
Yeah.
Like that. Something especially people I don't.
Yeah, and that is a good idea, especially if it's your first time on backup and volunteers aren't familiar or the CRSs aren't familiar with you. I think that's a great idea.
And when I've got an advocate and they haven't been on, and so then they're like, they're on hospital, I'm calling you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Good job, yes, this was very informative.
And if y'all ever have any questions, like just like the volunteers, like my door in my email is always open. So no question's a dumb question.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate your time. Like Katie said, if